This is the front end of a text cleaner. This is the back end of it. And that's the server it's hosted on. When you're a very beginner, I know that creating a web application can be pretty tough. So that's why I wanted to show you and how everything is pieced together with the example of a text cleaner. If creating an app is more than just knowing how to code in Python, then what are the other pieces? If becoming a cloud engineer takes years, then how can you learn about it in just a few minutes? I have 10 plus years of experience in engineering, so I'm going to explain to you in just a few minutes how to get started. And it all starts with understanding that there is 3 things that you need to know about: the backend, the front end, and the server. What's the front end and what is that? The front end is just what you see in the app, so that's just where you put the text in. So the raw text. So here we can take the example of an email that you want to clean. That's where you put the email as raw text. Then you'd have a submit button here. And as soon as you push the button, then you get the clean text, right? Of course, it's going to take a little bit of time because it's going to process the text, but that's the idea. Now, JS stands for JavaScript, but you don't need to worry about it too much because I'm going to explain why later on in the video. The only thing that you need to know about it is that it is used for the front end, and that's a programming language, and that's it. So now, what happens when you push the submit button? Well, you go to the back end here. So what's the back end? It's everything that you don't see. You get the email that got sent to the backend as soon as you pushed the submit button. And in the backend, you just have a prompt. And the prompt is going to say, clean that up, please. So now you have the 2 components, what to do with the email and the actual email. So now you can just send all of that to a large language model, meaning the large language model in and of itself doesn't matter. It could be ChatGPT, it could be Grok, it could be whatever. But this is just so that you can piece everything together right now. So because of the prompt, the large language model is going to know exactly what to do with the email. So now all you need to do is to take that cleaned up email and send it to the front end. And then you get the cleaned up email. So that's the basic gist of it. And of course, there is Python, which is the programming language that is going to be used for the backend. So this one actually matters. Here, Python actually doesn't necessarily matter. I'm explaining why in a second, but it could matter down the line if you're going to build an actual app that is going to do a lot more things, right? Because this is just an example. The point of this is not to just build a text cleaner, it's to know the foundations of how to build a web application in order to do something that actually matters down the line. And then the last thing is the server. And the server is just where the code lives. It could be your laptop, it could be something else. Most people don't use their laptops because your laptop is not going to work 24/7, right? So usually people use AWS or Amazon Web Services. Now, there are tons of providers, it doesn't necessarily matter, but AWS is just a pretty, it's really well known. So that's why I chose this one in this video. So I'm going to give you the details of what you need to be careful about with the server if you're going to do that. And that's the first step because this is where the code is going to live. So here, if you are actually going to do what I'm telling you to do, which is creating the text cleaner, then you actually don't need to install anything. You don't need to install Python on your laptop. You don't need to do any of that because we are going to do all of that on the server directly. Now, this is really the hack of this video. If you want to go fast, and you don't have Python, you don't know how to code, you don't know how to do anything, then forget about installing Python, forget about installing things to run JavaScript, forget about any of that. Instead, what you want to do is get a server, log on to it, and then install everything there. So what server do you actually need? So there might be easier way to do it, but I'm here to tell you the best practices of all of the best engineers that I've met and what I'm actually doing. So in my experience, when people give you easier way to do things, it actually ends up not being that easy at all. The reason for that is it's not the most common way of doing it. So large language models are not going to help you solve the problems that you have if you have problems. It's going to work easier if it does work, but usually it doesn't, and you need to troubleshoot. So if you don't expect troubleshooting, yeah, it's easier, but that's not the reality. So I'm here to give you what actually works. And so the best server that I would recommend would be Linux. And to go even further, what I would use is a specific distribution, which is Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. So why this one specifically? Because I know it and because it works extremely well and it's extremely reliable. You don't want to have something that is unreliable for your app. So that's what I would use. Now you don't have to do that specifically, but just understand the principle, right? You need something that is not going to break. So if you don't want to do that, do your own research, ask any large language model, any AI, it's going to help you decide, but make sure that it works all the time. And then you choose an EC2 instance on AWS. So that's basically the laptop that the code is going to live on. Now, of course, that's a paid service, so make sure that you know what you're getting into. And again, there might be cheaper way of doing it, but I'm here to just explain to you what the most common ways of doing it is. And all you need to be careful about here is just that you have enough space on it and you have enough RAM, right? So that means like maybe 2 gigs of RAM or maybe 4 gigs of RAM. Like it doesn't matter because it's not going to be, I mean, you don't need a lot of it because it's not a big application, but that could matter down the line. But you can always like increase the RAM if needed. And that's pretty much all you need to know about it. Now let's talk about the backend. What do you need to set it up? Well, you need a framework for Python. So basically what is going to do the link between the front end and the back end. So this, you could use Flask or Fast API. In this case, I would recommend Flask just because it's pretty easy to set up and you don't have to worry about it because you don't have any asynchronous thing going on. So anyways, for now, it could be changed later on. But if you do need to worry about it, then you will be able to change it. Now you need a large language model, right? So let's say ChatGPT. So what you need to do is you create an account and get the API key. The API key is just what's necessary in order to use a large language model. If you don't know how to do that, ask an AI. It's going to help you do that, right? It's not a very complicated thing. It is just about creating an account and then asking and going into the settings in order to get the API. And the third step, which could be the most scary, is doing the code. And that's when I'm going to tell you, like for now, if you don't know how to code, you actually don't need to know how to code in order to do that application. You give the API key to an AI. Whatever the AI is, it's going to be able to figure out the code. It doesn't matter at all. Now, if you want to have a very complex app, sure, the backend matters and don't do it with an AI. But for now, this is very simple. So this will do. If you have any issue with it, just take the output of the error that you have and feed it to the AI so that it can fix it. It's not going to be very difficult because it's not a very complicated app, so you don't actually need to code or to know how to code anything. And then the last step is the front end, which you don't have to do at all because the AI can do all of it for you. Now, trust me, I did the front end of multiple applications for that were like 10 times more complicated than this one for multiple clients. So for this one specifically, it's really not going to matter. AIs are really, really good at front-end engineering, so it actually doesn't matter. The only thing that you need to make sure is that it understands what you're doing, and you need to feed it the code of the backend so that it knows exactly that you're using Flask, that you're using Python, the API key you're using, all of that. Well, the API key doesn't actually matter. Just everything about your framework and the programming language you're using on the backend. It's going to give you the easiest way that you can set up the front end. The only thing that you want to make sure of is that it's going to use JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, which are the most common programming language to do the front end. Why does it matter? Because right now we're playing a little bit of a different game now. What matters is not how difficult or how easy a programming language is. What actually matters now is how common it is, because large language models are going to do a good job at doing it. Now, I'm not saying to do vibe coding and do everything with AI, right? But for prototyping and for doing things that actually don't really matter, like that are extremely easy to do, then yeah, use AI for that, right? And when you actually want to do things that are actually complicated, then you ask the AI to explain to you how things work with that programming language. And it's going to be able to do that extremely well if that programming language is actually very common, because all of that is complicated enough as it is. So if you're doing things that are not using like the standard approaches, then it's going to make it harder for the AI to explain to you how to make it work. Or even if you're asking it to make it work, it's not necessarily going to be able to do that. Now, if you want to get started with AI, I know that it can be a little bit overwhelming, everything that I just said right now. That's the reason why I created a free online course, so you can click on the link in the description to get it. Thanks for watching and see you at the next one.